operation and the standard items on there, but the weaknesses are not good reporting, virtually from an analysis standpoint, virtually none. But the payable modules, in order to keep the trust accounting separate, both separating the management company's financial statement from the owners, has been a big challenge.
Okay. Anything else that comes up for you?
Well, the receivables part has also been difficult. We have a lot of third-party billing with the outfits that we house for, and that's all done separately with manual spreadsheets and invoicing. The receivables are very, they're non-existent, really. We have to create all of that from an invoicing standpoint. We get the folios out of the software, but not the whole receivable billing and that type of thing. So it becomes very cumbersome putting all that together.
Right. And what is your operating accounting system?
Great Plains Dynamics.
Okay.
Microsoft.
All right. Well, I think we'll start with this morning, Tracy, if it's works for you, is kind of we'll explain to you how money flows through the Barefoot system, and we will anticipate a barrage of questions from you and try to hit on what you just mentioned as well. So please feel free to jump in whenever a question comes up for you or you would like some more clarification.
Okay.
Dokie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Is that my cue, Claiborne?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's nice to meet you. This is Tracy. Like I said, I'm here in sunny Southwest Colorado. Beautiful day in the mountains today. Hopefully, it is for you too.
Not bad.
Not bad. Good.
I would say
we finally stopped getting snow.
You'll probably be in the 70s, right? We're like almost 90 here, so.
Yeah, we might hit 70 today. It's probably going to stay pretty close to that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, but I'm going to be a little bit higher in elevation than you guys. I'm sitting up at about 7,700 feet in the mountains in the southwest corner of Colorado.
Yeah, just about 5,000 feet.
Yeah, I think Colorado typically is higher than most. Hey, particularly, they're higher than everybody.
Yeah, hey, nice, good catch that.
Oh, goodness. All right, so today I'm going to just kind of go through some very basic information about the Barefoot accounting system, and then get into some particulars on reports and the month-end process and kind of the tools that you have at your disposal to be able to use to help run the vacation rental part of the business through the software without having to do a lot of work outside the system. So basically, I would like to start off with basically just explaining the fact that the agent system is a property-based trust accounting system. And what that means is that basically every penny that's paid into the system is automatically allocated to be paid out to either owners or vendors, or in the case of something like a security deposit refund, back to the guest. So the whole kind of point of that is so that you can have accurate trust accounting reporting if you need to, balance to your bank account each and every day or just at the end of the month. So it kind of runs the gamut from being able to receive payments, being able to run an accounts payable report for your vendors, being able to run all kinds of different reports to know who owes you money, when they should be charged, and the ability to go ahead and charge those folks and send out correspondence to them really easily through a bunch of different reports that we have. So the first thing that I like to do is to just kind of go into a reservation or a folio And it sounds like we use the same wording there. One thing that you might find is that I speak Barefoot language. Each different software package that I've come across has basically their own set of terminology. So if there's ever anything that I mention that sounds unfamiliar to you, go ahead and stop and ask me what I'm talking about. Because you might have the same basic functionality in Track at this point, but we might call it something different.
Okay.
So please don't hesitate, as Claiborne said, please don't hesitate to jump in and ask questions. That's kind of what makes it fun, and it lets me know what it is that you're looking for. I made some notes when we were talking at the beginning, so I know, the AP module is something that I definitely want to show you, and it sounds like reporting is something that you would benefit from in our system. So I believe that you've already seen the system to a certain extent, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive into our folios menu and go to a search for folios page. And I've got a folio already kind of set up that I can use to walk you through the flow of money through the system. Everybody has a kind of a different protocol. Some of them are pretty similar, but everybody has their own particular rules for when you want to collect money and when you want to pay out money, collecting it from the guests and paying it out to your owners and vendors. And I apologize for not being 100% familiar with your rules, but that's something that as we go through this process, we'll learn more and more about. So I'm going to just select a folio. From this page, you can do a lot of different things. I can go directly to a folio if I know the folio number. I can search for folios by property code. I can search for arrivals, departures, and I can use my drop-down menu here to select from a bunch of different reports. We'll circle back and take a look at some of these different reports and let you know what they're here for. But for the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and go into my sample folio. So I'm just entering the folio number and clicking on the search button, and it's going to open that folio in the same browser tab. So what I'm seeing here in this particular reservation is that it is a regular reservation. We have the ability to set up what are called different reservation types. And what we'll do is we'll work with you to find out what kinds of stays that you typically have. And we'll build rules with you as far as when you want to collect money from the guest and when you want to pay it out. On what basis do you want to pay it out? So if you could just kind of clue me in a little bit, do you run your owner statements on a monthly basis?
Yes.
Cool. And on what basis do you pay the owner? For example, do you pay them based on the date that the folio arrives, or when it departs, or when you receive money from somebody?
Unfortunately, we have two choices. We pay them either on arrival or on departure. We pay them on departure. What we honestly prefer is to pay them in the month for the month, but we haven't seen that software in a long time. So we pay them on departure.
Okay, so you would basically take a February departure and pay the owner for that rental revenue, let's say the beginning of March?
Yes.
Okay, that's really typical. And I'm excited to hear that you pay based on departure, because it's just paying based on the arrival date. I've worked in situations where we've done both, and it just makes folios a little bit more difficult to deal with when you've paid an owner and the guest is still potentially in-house. So I'm happy to hear that you do pay based on departure. You can actually pay out from the Barefoot system at any point in time. You don't have to run a standard monthly statement if you don't choose to. We have plenty of clients who actually, based on their market, they have to pay the owner as soon as they've received money from the guest. So it's not based on departure, it's not based on arrival, it's based on, if I make a reservation for somebody and they're coming in February, but I take their payment today, we have folks who once a week will turn around and pay that money out to the owners. So the system is very flexible as far as the frequency with which you pay your owners or when you want to pay the owners. So if you wanted to make a switch from paying in March for February departures to paying in March for March, you potentially could. You would just build that into your rules, and you would run your process the batch management process to pay the owners as often as you'd like.
So I got a
If you
question.
offer that kind of flexibility.
I have a question on that, and then Tracy. So does that mean we could pay, because reporting, well, we used to have a reporting set up years ago when the software could do it, and old software could do it. We could run the reports for the month, in the month, okay, and instead of dates rolling over into the following months, we could run that report for that month. Can the system, sounds like it might be able to pay the owners for just those nights that were rented in a specific month, even though it
Yeah, basically, what we'll do is we'll work with you to say, okay, I'm going to charge for a regular reservation type. I'm going to charge rent. I'm going to charge a cleaning fee and a processing fee, an inspection service, and we've got some taxes. And on this particular folio, I've actually entered a discount for the rent. And what we'll do is we'll say, okay, out of all of these items that we're going to charge, when do we want to collect them? And we'll set those rules up for that particular reservation type. And you'll see at the top of the folio here that we have certain amounts that are due on certain target dates. The same thing goes for paying out to the owner. So I'm just scrolling down in the reservation or folio screen, and you can now see the owner section. And one thing that I like to just point out is that in the system, the accounting is very, very transparent. When a reservation is created, all of the accounting for that particular reservation is available for you to look at and to edit as necessary. And it flows through the system, and it will carry through into the statements. So when we talk with you about determining when you want to collect money, we also say, okay, let's set the rules for when we want to pay out. Now, it won't pay out money until money is received, and it will allocate all of the money that's been received to the specific services that are being paid for and create the payout dates. So in this particular system, in this demo system, we have money being paid out to the owner based on the departure date. And I can look at the detail here and see that my rent is paying out on the departure date. Everything basically except for these taxes. And this is a little weird. I'm not sure why these taxes are showing up for the owner, although we do have some clients that actually have to remit the sales tax to the owner, and the owner has to pay it to the tax agency. So we may have been demoing for that particular client when we set this up. So I can see here, if you wanted to pay out based on the arrival date, we would set the rule to show that due date or payout date based on the arrival date. So we can work with you to determine what date you want to use as a trigger, and then be able to run your batch to pay your owners based on those payout dates. So the basic way that batch management system works is that when we create a batch, we give it an ending date, and the system's going to collect up all the folios that have items or services that are either income or expenses to the owner and place them on the statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So what I can see here, and I'm going to hide this detail. We don't need to see those two dates right now because we can see down here at the bottom of the page as well as at the top of the page what is due from the guest. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've received a payment of $1,950, and I can see here in my payment column that has been applied on the January 6th date to all these different services. And I can then come down and look through my folio and see that I have due dates to pay all of that money out. Now, it's not going to pay that out until you actually go through the batch process and this folio is collected up in a batch and then paid out to the owner. Here, what I think I'd like to do is go ahead and take a look at some of the different reports that are available on our Search for Folios page. We have all kinds of different reports that are configurable. And when I say configurable, you don't need us to actually determine what's in those reports. We will show you how you can go in and modify reports as you see fit. So you'll notice that we have things like an arrival list 2, 3, and 4. You may want to have one arrival list for potentially your front office who's checking people in and checking people out, and it might need to have certain information about payments that are still due and information like that, but you may want to give an arrival list to a housekeeper to go out and do unit inspections on a turnover day, and you might not want to have the same information on that report as you do for the front office or reservations department. So we give you the ability to modify the output of these reports. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of show a date range here and give you kind of an example of what you can do.
This isn't the new UI, right? This is the older one?
Yes. Yep. Functionally, it'll be just about the same. It's just a nicer look and feel. I shouldn't say just a nicer look and feel. It's a much nicer look and feel. I know Claiborne and our consultants have been working really hard on it. So what I have here is an arrival list, and you can see that I have columns for my folio number, my property, the clean status, my last departure, arrival, all these different columns. I might find that I don't need to have just the rent amount. So if I did not want that, there would be a way that you could go into our catalog, kind of through the back-end setup page, and add and remove different columns to each of these different reports that are in that drop-down menu. That I find very, very handy. Because like I said, you might have different people in different departments who need different information, and rather than having one report that gives all the information, you can set up some reports for those specific people and those specific tasks.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's really pretty cool. As far as being able to run kind of an AR, when I think about AR in terms of vacation rental company and guest reservations, I'm thinking mostly of people who owe me their second payment, because I'm probably going to take a first payment right around the time of booking, but then sometime before their arrival date, I'm going to want to collect the final balance. Is that how you guys are all set up?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what we have are 3 different reports that I think would be useful. I usually would use the Due Now report. What that's going to do is basically say, because I know that all of my money that's due in are based on those due dates that we've set up in the reservation type, I can go to my Due Now report and say, with one field, say, I want to know everything that has a due date on or before today. Or I can say, I want to look at everybody who owes us money that's 10 days out. So I can use this due date to determine which folios I'm looking at and whether or not I want to go ahead and charge people because they're due now, or if I want to take a look 7 to 10 days out and say, hey, I need to send a payment reminder letter to these folks so that they do send us a check, or we go ahead and charge their credit card. We have a deposit pending report, which works just about the same, but you can use different search criteria. And then we have a folio with balance report that you can use either to help you collect money from folks, or in my experience, I typically would use this report to look for people who have departed in the recent past who might have a balance that's owing or that I owe them, like in the case of a security deposit. Or in my example folio, I gave them a discount after the fact, after they paid in full. So I would be able to see that I owed them back $100 and some odd by using my folio with balance report. Any questions or anything that you'd like to see in more detail? No? Cool. When we run these reports, you have a lot of different options once the report has actually been generated. I'm just going to go back to, if I can here, my...
What you were talking about, receivables?
Just our timeshare billing being the receivable part. So, yeah, every one of those folios that come out are going to have a balance due on them. So, you can run a balance due report, and then you should be able to match it up to your sheets that you actually receive from them. And do that, but I don't know if it actually does the invoicing for it.
And run a balance due report based on,
You want to ask
The
her that
vendor.
question?
because you want to run one for Blue Green, one for Monkey, or whoever, right? Not just a bulk,
Yeah, need to do it by.
and whatever that would be called.
Tracy, the question I'll have relative to receivables would be, what we do is we'll have, let's say, anywhere 10, 15 or more checking out on a day that's going to have a balance due on them because we bill the third party that's housing them here with us. Is there reporting that gives me that? We have about 3 or 4 different brands or entities that do that I can print out a report for each one of those entities and who they are and how much they owe, either daily, weekly, monthly.
Sure. Is the guest of record usually the actual guest, or is it the name of the entity that's doing the booking?
It'll be set up with the individual entity that we work with, the people that are involved with them. Now, there'll be some use for those people's names and otherwise, maybe from either marketing or...
Yeah, the way we do it now, the folio has the guest name on it, but it has a marketing code in there that is tied back to the company that we're dealing with. We call them direct bills because they're billed
Right.
direct to those folks. But yeah, that's what we use, a marketing code, and we also have a direct bill code that's on the folio, so we can search it by that. But it does have the guest name on there, yes.
Sure. So you could do the same thing basically here. You could run, you could set up one of these reports, whether it's a folio report or whether it's, a departure report. You could probably even use the folio with balance report. And if you do the same thing, we would use a source of business. And if your source of business was direct bill, you could then, choose that. I don't have that in the list here, but I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. You could go ahead and choose your direct bill source of business, use some departure dates, and generate a list of folios. From your list of folios, you can do a lot of different things. One of those things that you could do is to have a statement built in the system in a letter, what we call a letter, and you could then generate your list, click on the statement that you wanted to send, and you could email that to the email of record if you wanted to. Another way to do it would be to go ahead and use the actual batch management process if you wanted to send them an actual statement. In our batch management process, you can produce property statements to pay your owners. You can produce vendor statements to pay your external and your internal, your corporate vendors. And you can also do tenant statements. So let's say, we want to select a departure date of May 31st, and we run a tenant batch that's going to collect up any tenants, any guests in the system, any folios where money is either owed to them or owed to you. So that would be, you'd be able to actually send them a statement per property for the different folios that they have. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that.
What we also have, Tracy, with those direct bills is a sales tax situation that sometimes some of the entities, the guest pays the sales tax when they arrive, and then there's others that do not. There's a number of special circumstances or situations with them, not only rate related, but it's not just a straight set rate all the time with each entity, and it's all the same. So I assume it's all on the setup that you'd be able to differentiate all that.
Yep. What we may end up doing is taking a look at using different reservation types if you're going to have different rates for the different entities. So rather than using a source of business, we could actually set up your res type so that it would be, you could have those different rules for each of the different entities, and they could have different pricing as far as the rent is concerned.
They've actually got a module where you can actually select units that they can book to.
So like that rate type, could you set up a particular fee that's associated with that rate type, so like a different processing fee and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, that could happen for sure. And you don't even have to use a different service. You can use the same processing fee, but in the rate setup, we can tell it to have a different rate for the different res types.
Yeah, what we do specifically is we contract a rate with a vendor, but of that rate, they don't care what we do with it relative to how much of it's a processing fee or how much of it's a rent and so forth. So sometimes that needs to be reallocated or refigured based on which brand it is.
Yeah, we have to do it manually, right?
Right now, it's very painful right now, yes, to do that and manipulate the way that the system sees the overall dollar charge, because there's different set of circumstances.
Okay, I don't think I've heard anything that makes me say, I don't think we can do that, but we definitely want to, start looking at some specific setups and make sure that we can accommodate what you need. But basically what I'm looking at and showing you right here is our global price table. You have the ability in the system to set up pricing on a global level that reaches out and populates into the specific property price tables. And you can also then, on specific properties, adjust rates. If one house has a processing fee that's $150 and one other has one that's $75, you can do that by setting individual pricing on the property level. But what I wanted to show you is that I could go ahead and, let's say for my booking fee, I'd like to have a different booking fee for my Expedia res type than my regular res types or all my other res types. It's really quite easy to go ahead and just add that right in. So here I now, in my booking fee, have a 1 to 7 night booking fee of $75 and then 8 to 15 night for all of my res types except Expedia. And if I wanted to, I could make this $100. And then $175 or whatever it might be, just kind of making it up. So I think we could work a lot with that kind of idea as far as the different entities that are booking those direct billing folios.
So that's just set up as a vendor. Can we set that up by cabins as well, or by our own individual property?
I'm not sure I understand. You can adjust pricing on an individual property level. Absolutely. What this is kind of the global setup. And then if we were to go to a property, you could see that you have a price table that's available for just that property. And what's going to happen whenever I make a change in the global price table, it's going to push it through to each of the properties, but then I can override it on a property level.
It just seems like one of our biggest challenges is we have a lot of individual situations, whether it's requests from owners, whether it's set up through vendors, whether it's based on property condition or otherwise, that needs a lot of individuality with the setup of the unit itself.
And that's absolutely not a problem. There's a lot of flexibility within the property page itself. You could have, a handful of, let's say the bulk of your inventory you want to book during season from Saturday to Saturday, or maybe, a shorter stay, but you always want to make sure that you have specific turnover days. You could manage that on a property by property level. So you could have, 75% of your inventory going by one rule, and the other 25% are all kind of individual rules. And that's not a problem. It'll take a little bit to get set up, but once it's set up, it generally works like a dream.
Well, I don't want to skip around on you too much, so I'm not really sure when to throw in questions or not here, but I know that some of the questions we have a lot, is regarding a yield management type of scenario.
That's tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that tomorrow? Oh, okay.
Going through revenue tomorrow.
Is that tomorrow's demo play?
1:30 tomorrow.
1:30 tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep, that is. We set aside some time for just that. Absolutely. And just so you guys know, when the way that we try to capture all this different information about your different reservation types and all of your rules is when we work through that document that we call the business rules matrix. And that's where we'll spend quite a bit of time gathering information from you about your requirements so that we can best, leverage the Barefoot technology to, make your processes more efficient, essentially. And a lot of these sorts of things that Tracy is talking about and the things that you're asking about get documented in that document, and that document actually becomes part of our contract. So we will go through that together as a team, essentially.
Yeah, the thing that interests me a lot in my day-to-day is from the yield management side is the reporting you get out of it. I know we're always interested in comparing a date and time, where we are, relative to sales, advanced reservations, that particular day, and all that type of thing. Is there going to be a reporting portion of today's?
Yes.
Yeah, one thing would be like today, for example, looking at our booking pace currently for July. Could I go back to June 1st of 15 and see what my booking pace was for July last year to see if I'm plus or minus as far as the booking pace, advanced booking goes? Just to be able to go back and get a snapshot of what was going on at that time last year versus this year. So right now, if July, if I'm at 85% of my revenue compared to last year, was I on that same pace last June 1st versus this June 1st? I don't know if I said that.
We've got a report that is right up your alley. I usually would show this a little later in the presentation, but I'm more than happy to stop here and just let you know that under the accounting menu in our month-end reports, we've got something that's called Portfolio Projection Comparison Report. That will be being renamed. It's a little lengthy of a name for me, so we're going to rename that to basically calling it the PACE report. And it's exactly what you're looking for. I can say I would like to take a look at any date range in my current period. So if I wanted to look at just July of 2016 as of today and compare it to July of last year as of June 1st of last year, I can absolutely do that. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit broader of a date range because I know that there's not a whole lot of reservation activity in this demo system at this point. So I'm going to take a look at all of 2016 compared to all of 2015. I'm going to do that as of today.
So it looks like you can.
Yes, it's got it. Looks like it's got an amenity list and location based.
The interesting thing about this report is that you can run it in a variety of different ways to get different output. The standard way that I think people typically use a PACE report is to base it on your active property. What do I have in my inventory that's booking actively right now compared to active properties from the prior year? I can base my report either on occupancy, arrival, or departure. I would think that if you folks are paying your owners based on the departure date, then it would make sense to run that report based on the departure date, but you can certainly choose to run it any of those three ways that you'd like. Where it gets really cool, I think, is here under the analysis by. Right now, it's defaulting to the unit code. And in the system, we found that people will usually either use a unit code or they will use a property name. So you have either of those traces here. Or you can run it by what's called an address ID, which is the unique numeric identifier that the system gives to each property and each record that's in the system. But I can also run this report, a case report, based on my source of business. Yeah. So if you've got a lot of good marketing codes and you want to know which marketing codes are outperforming this year compared to last year, or where you might be spending money where reservations just aren't being generated very well, you can use this report to see that. And that, I think, is kind of head and shoulders above other case reports that I've seen. I could also run this based on guest information. Do I want to see where my guests are coming from and how different states are doing this year compared to last year? I'm going to leave it just as the basic unit code. I can run this report. I can sort it by the same basis as my analysis, or I can sort it by the percentage, which is pretty helpful. I can then also use my basic search criteria if I wanted to narrow this down and only look at a report for 2-bedroom properties. And these are all customizable by you. You'll set these up and be able to search by what you know is important in your marketplace to search by.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I'm going to go ahead and run the report and take a quick look at it. What it's showing me is each property, what the current total charges are, what my current rent for this year is compared to rent for last year. And you'll notice that we don't have much in the way of 2015 data in the system, so all of these percentages are going to look pretty out of whack. But you know, if you have, excuse me, once you get into the system and you have, you know, prior year data, this would be a very, very helpful tool. I think that's what you guys are looking for.
Yeah, that guest comp out there at the end, is that like owner stays and VIP, that sort of thing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite understand.
Comp. Yeah, I was just wondering that comp out there at the end, that's just like, yeah, I guess comp stays. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to tell you the number of nights in the different types of stays, the different res types. So whether it's a regular booking, some people call it a short-term or vacation rental booking. You've got your owners, where they come in and use the property themselves, whether you've just got a maintenance block, an owner guest, or a comp stay.
And this is by individual unit. We can set this up however we want, whether we want it to be by our brand, Eagle Ridge versus Heritage, or just in a summation total, or
because the grand total's up there and then it breaks it.
That would just be driven by setting up these different amenities on the property level and then being able to search by them. So if you wanted to run this report for, like I said, just your 2-bedroom properties, or in your case, just for a particular area, then you could.
yeah, usually what we like to look at is just excluding of either owner stays or maybe even our third-party stuff, which is artificially low in ADR, that would affect what the overall look of that would look at. So I guess during that selection process, you can exclude all that.
You could. You could also come over to the Folios drop-down menu and take a look at the enhanced occupancy report. It's going to give you a little bit different information, but potentially very helpful information for what you're looking for. And what that does, you can run this for either a particular property by entering an individual unit code. You can still use your search criteria to narrow it down to a particular area or style of unit. And then I would say I'm trying to look at my occupancy report for, I'm going to say let's go to the end of June. And I could choose just individual reservation types, or I can leave that for all of the active res types. And what I'm going to get is, once again, a list of my properties, but it's going to show me a little bit different information. It's going to tell me the number of nights that are booked, the percentage of the time period that I've entered. So if I've got 15 nights that are booked, I'm at 50% because I've run this for 1 month. It'll tell me the number of folios, the average length of stay. So a little bit different information here. I do have 29 records on 3 different pages. If I wanted to see them all on one page, I would just click on my one-page view. But it does give me some other information down here at the bottom that may be more helpful in what you were just asking about. So this is it comparing this year to last year, but it's giving you some other information about the types of stays, how many nights, and how much revenue was booked.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing we get asked, Tracy, is when we're looking or talking, speaking with owners, they want to see how they're doing this year versus last year at a point in time and those kind of things.
Yeah.
What the makeups are and that type of thing. So, yeah, that's right off.
Yes, there are also some rental history reports that are really easy to get to, either from the Search for Folios page or actually in the Search for Properties page as well. There are lots of different icons and links all throughout the system that'll help you navigate from place to place without having to go back out to a main menu and then drilling down to get to a certain point. So
how much of this is accessible by the owners if they wanted to look and see these things themselves? How much can we limit it, I guess, would be the other thing. If we want them to be able to see, I guess, at times if they want to look at it that way, but just to see how their future reservations are doing or they can review their monthly reservations. I assume you can open that up or close that off as much as you want.
Yes and no. What we have is our owner access piece where the owners can log in using their email address and their individual password. And in that owner access, you have the ability to set up a lot of different access controls. There aren't a lot of reports necessarily that are available. What we do publish is the property statements. The owners can log into their account online and they can take a look at their statements. They can look at their property page setup if you want them to. They can adjust things like, if they've changed a queen bed to a king bed, you could allow them to be able to make changes like that through that access piece. They can go in and take a look at existing reservations, and you do have some control over the information that they're allowed to see. Some folks really don't like to give out the guest's first and last name because they feel like the owner is going to try to contact them directly. So you can hide that information, but you could show things like the total gross rent, arrival dates, departure dates, so that the owners know, they can see a list of reservations and do certain actions within that page. But most of these reports that are within the agent system are for your use. You can run those reports and then email them to the owner really easily if you wanted to share them with them. And if there's anything, that you really would want the owners to have access to, we could talk about, possibility of doing some customization to that owner access piece and having that available, but it's not necessarily part of the standard package.
Yeah, Tracy, what we get is the once a year at least of where they'll want to get a breakout of their entire year's expenses and 1099 purposes, and that type of thing for their tax purposes. So just didn't know if they'd have access to look at that and get that in a report form they could use.
Yeah, and we would have the year-to-date available through the owner access piece. Not necessarily the 1099s, but their income and expense summary they would be able to see.
So this is Claiborne. I opened up our demo for owner access, and you can see here that you can share information with them. You can ask them to update information about themselves, hopefully giving you some additional demographic information, whatever amenities that are of interest to you that will help you continue to build the relationship with them. They would be able to see their properties, especially if they have more than one property. They can add pictures or look at pictures. They can see any kind of attachments, so maybe that's the updated owner contract, for example. In some markets, they would like their owners to be able to modify price. But in most markets, this is just being able to look at the price table. they can see availability on their property. They will be able to see the different kinds of reservation types, showing them different colors based on the key down here. They can also look at their property accounting on the basis of a date range, and of course could go between the two different properties if they own more than one. Existing reservations is pretty much the same as what we looked at, but just not in calendar form. They can see work orders that have been generated. They can create a work order. Okay, so if they were coming into town and they wanted to have the comforters dry cleaned, they could let you know that, and that would automatically generate an email and a reminder in our system for the appropriate person. And then they can also see reports and owner statements and 1099s.
Yeah, it looks like that one report that showed the expenses. They put the whole date in, whatever they wanted, and it showed the list of expenses.
Yeah, they can actually set these dates.
I have a question, Claiborne, on that. Number
Sure.
one, we can turn some of those things on and off, right, and give them access
Yes.
to what we want. Secondly, for the places that let them put in photos and update information on the units, is there a notice to the management company that that has been done, or is there a holding pattern where that goes into and says, hey, the owners are wanting to make this change, do you want to allow it? Because we, number one, it's not going to change it on the website, and et cetera, et cetera. We want to know before they go making changes.
You bet. Absolutely. There's definitely an approval process that you can put into place.
Yeah.
And they can also create a booking right here as well. So if they wanted to come in, and you can actually show them more than just the owner. If you wanted to let them do, if you built a reservation type that was called owner guest non-paying, it's still not quite owner time, but you want to track that, or that it's an owner referral, and maybe that particular res type has a different commission structure. They could actually be helping you manage the reservations that they want to book. So that can be quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
And if they were doing something with Airbnb or Flipkey, VRBO or something like that, you could make those res types available to them as well. So lots of flexibility in the owner portal.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's horrible.
And of course, look and feel, this is just HTML. We can build this out to your branding. And then the way is just to make sure that all of your communications with your owners is driving them to essentially coming into this portal and somehow rewarding them for that with, the up to the minute information, or when they enter a work order that takes top priority and it gets done right away, or, there's 50 ways from Friday to keep them coming back in here and saving your staff time.
Yep, I like that.
Got like phone calls, and you can go directly through the email process where there's a written record of it. Yeah, that would be positive.
Yeah, and I think, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we send the statements out of the Barefoot system to the owners, it goes as an attachment, and essentially could that also just drive them to coming back to logging into the portal, to coming over and into this reports page? Or is that separate hyperlink?
Well, what we typically do is there's a way to email the owners right from the batch management page. As you're finishing up the batch management or payment process, you can send an email to the owners, and you have control over what you'd like to have in that email. Typically, what we default to and what people mostly use is just a very short note that says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, here's your monthly statement. Click here to follow a hyperlink. And what that does is it basically just opens that statement, same way that it looks on the page here from the owner access. It just opens it up as a browser page. So if you wanted to have the owners log in and actually use the owner portal, you could embed a link in that email that would take them to the login page where they could then go and take a look that way. So you could do it either way.
Yeah, we could use this system also to send in. I just noticed the sliding glass door comment there. We could also put pictures in there. So like if we're out in the field and there's something needs to be done, we could take a picture, upload it to us, and say, hey, you need to check this out and have it fixed. Can we go ahead? That kind of thing.
Yep, that would be
Absolutely.
what they would be able to see by linking into these work orders. And there's also an email that can go out to them directly from the work order module.
Email directly from work.
You can be right there, boom, and it's in your system. It's captured. We don't have to.
Tracy, I'll give it back to you if you don't mind just popping open the
Sure.
work order just as a quick refresh on that. Here you go.
So Playbarn just put in a work order via the owner portal. We're going to take a look here and be able to see that work order in the system.
It may be to demo 2, actually, Tracy. I think I'm logged into demo 2,
okay.
so I'm not sure that one's going to pop up in there. But if we could just,
that's okay.
Yeah, if we could just see where you can email the owner, also that would be just any work order.
I mean, right now I'm in the work order module or portion of the menu. I've just gone to a basic search. I can search using this page. Once again, I can use my basic search criteria that I've set up for all of my different property search pages, or I could search by, if I know the actual ID number of the work order, I could enter it here and search. What it defaults to is looking for open work orders that were entered in the past month. I'm just going to go ahead and click on search because I know I'll get a few different results. And I'm going to go into my work order 308 here. And from here, I can choose a specific letter that I've built in the system. If I'd like to send something out to the owner, I can choose that letter. I can email it either to the person who it's assigned to, or I can email it to the owner. And I'm not sure if we've already done a demo with you on the work order module itself, if it's well familiar, or if this is all new territory.
And we glossed over the work orders a little bit the last time, but not too in depth.
Cool. Well, I'd like to kind of get back onto the what we started with, which is kind of the flow of money through the system.
Yep.
What we've talked about so far are a lot of management reports that you can use to help you with yield management, as well as collecting money from your guests when it's due. So we know that we have a bunch of different reports in our search portfolio page that's going to help us with that. Moving from there, it's time to now go into our accounting menu and take a look at some of our daily reports, the banking operations reports, and our month-end reports. One of the things that I think I heard you say is that you just don't have what you consider great reporting in your current system. And I just want to make sure that you see that we have all kinds of different reports that will help you through the month-end process. Specifically, we have a couple of reports, 3 different reports that are going to help you manage your folios to make sure that your data is all nice and clean and ready to go. So we'll walk you through and train you on how to use these different reports to make sure that you don't have payments that have not been applied, that you don't have any mismatches between your invoices and your bills, the money that you're collecting and the money that you're paying out, and that everything that's supposed to have a due date has a due date. So by using those 3 reports on a really regular basis throughout the month, you can catch any folios that have discrepancies and get them fixed so that by the time you go to do your month-end processing, you're not looking at a large number of folios that may need correction. So we'd like to make sure that we get you up to speed on those. We have balance reports by property. You can take a look at your travel insurance reports if you offer travel insurance and you need to pay that vendor. We have specific reports that are designed to meet the criteria of the different travel insurance vendors. There's a reserve fund report. Do y'all keep an owner fund or reserve funds on hand for owners to cover expenses during kind of the shoulder seasons?
No.
No? Okay. Well, then you don't need that report, but it's there. So just some different reports that you could use to help you through the month, know where you are with certain things. The tax report is another great one. My old system that I used before I started using Barefoot, I had to kind of figure out what basis and how much to pay sales tax each month on a spreadsheet because my system didn't have a good report. Our system here in the agent system gives you a report that 99% of the clients that I've worked with say, this is exactly what I need to be able to do my taxes on a monthly basis and pay them on time and pay them easily. Because it just, based on your rules, it will kick out a report that says for all of my departures for the month of February, this is the total amount of taxable rent, this is the total amount of taxable other services, and my total amount of tax is in that report. And as you go to pay that vendor through the batch management process, you can compare your check payment to the report and know that whatever paperwork you need to fill out for those taxing agencies will be, I would think, fairly easy to do. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that was there. Our banking operations reports basically are going to be payment transactions. We have a mechanism to make the bank reconciliations really, really easy called deposit slips. The basic premise behind a deposit slip is that you want to try to make a one-to-one match between what you've actually received in the system and what is deposited in the bank. So, you know, when you start thinking about a bank reconciliation and the fact that you might have, 15 credit cards that got processed today, did those 15 credit cards all clear the bank in the same deposit? If they did, then you'd simply put them into a deposit slip on kind of a day-to-day basis, so that by the time you go to do your bank reconciliation, you're not looking at, several hundred individual transactions to try to match up to what was really deposited. You're looking at deposit slips within a system that already match what was deposited in the bank. So my bank reconciliation process went from several hours per account in my old system to being able to do a bank rec from pretty much start to finish in about 45 minutes. So that was a huge time savings for me from my old system to the Barefoot system. And it's all because of this little thing called a deposit slip, which I never knew I thought would sound exciting, but now that I've used them for several years, I don't see how I could do it without them. So you can use your payment transaction report to, have an audit at the end of the day to make sure that you're taking a look at the credit cards that were processed through your credit card portal. You can take a look at that. I know I used to get an email from my provider so I could see that I have a batch of X number of dollars, and I could see that at the end of the day I could run my payment transaction report and know that I have X number of dollars that was posted in the system. You can do the same thing if you accept cash or checks or e-checks. The report basically lets you choose which payment type you'd like to run the report for, or you can run it for all of them. You should be able to see that screen.
Can you do Bitcoin?
Bitcoin? No, I don't know if I've ever been asked that question.
my partner wants to do that so badly.
You're a funny man.
I know. I'm like, wait a minute, are they serious? Okay. So no, I don't know that Ed, we've ever been asked that question before. Have you?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
How about barter? We can barter some stuff.
Well, that's always more fun.
Can those reports be run by source of business and that kind of thing, just so we could track on a daily basis the source of business kind of thing?
I don't know that I've ever been asked that question either. The source of business usually isn't in the report output for the payment transactions.
Yeah, well, we could just run it on a daily basis, source of business.
Yeah, I mean, there is a source of business report that we'll be able to show you at some point. Maybe that would be part of tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I just thought it'd be nice for the accounting office, for Ken to be able to know, because he does all our financial reporting and that kind of thing, and runs the financials on a monthly basis. So it's just nice to be able to have those things. But it's in there.
Yeah. Yep, and just the wheels are kind of turning. Sorry, I didn't mean to pause there, but you may be able to use one of the different folio reports and set it up so that you get the columns that you want and the information that you need. You could certainly have a list of folios based on a date range that gives you, the total rent or the total, gross sales, and does tell you the source of business. And you can run those reports based on different, individual sources of business, or you could run the report for all of them and then sort it by the source of business. So you could probably then export it to Excel. It might take a little bit of massaging and manipulation to get exactly the output that you're looking for. But the information is all there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to ask the question to get it out of the system the way that you need it.
Yeah, that's good, because we can't do that right now with a couple of things, and that's important.
Yeah, that's why we built this list of folio reports, to have so many kind of duplicates, because we just found that people need different things, and to have the ability to set those up for yourself really easily, I think is just like really kind of cool. I know that it was something that was like pulling teeth in my old system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Tracy, on the payment side, I know we do try to do some cash flow projections on a monthly basis there. So to be able to see that in summarized forms of weeks and months, and then compare, month to month, year to year like that, are those reporting capability in that as well?
You're looking at maybe projected commission income or income for the company?
Well, actually, just the cash flow of what payments actually went through that day. Currently, we can do it on a daily basis. We get that on there, but if you want it on a monthly, you have to add them all up individually and do that to get those kind of things, and then being able to look at it in a year over year or month over month is not available as well.
So you're talking about
year over year, month over month, I don't know that we really have available. What we have in our advanced accounting report is something called a bank transaction report. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually show you the same information as in a payment transaction report. What payments were taken today, what payments were made today, and what is my running balance of my bank account. So you could potentially run that report for this year and run that report for last year and have that information, but I'm not sure that we have exactly what you're looking for. And you would be able to run reports based on due dates to know, for the month of October, how much money should I be expecting to receive?
Yeah, something that just, like I said, generally do it in a 30-day to 60-day outlook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also what's called a services report. That's going to show you what you are charging people, but not necessarily what they've paid for yet. So that number, to me, that number is a little bit ambiguous, because you might be looking at something that's 3 months out and you may have some cancellations. But as long as you know that if your normal cancellations are 5% of your reservation total, then you'd be able to have that number in your head and be able to adjust that for that number.
Again, everything I do right now is separate Excel spreadsheets and from bank reconciliation on down to these different cash flow reports and all. So can't do anything like that in the system itself.
Yeah, then you're going to really love the bank reconciliation process in Barefoot. Before I go there, I'd like to explain a little bit about our trust account management and how you have the ability to know what your trust account liability is on a day-to-day basis. So if you think about what the trust account liability is, it's basically all the money that you're holding that has not yet been paid out. So we would be holding future reservation money that would be in the form of rent, because we saw on that folio that as soon as a guest makes a payment into a folio, that the money is applied to the different services. So the way that the system keeps track of what your trust account liability should be, or is in what we call our trial balance report. what it does is it keeps track of every payment that has been made into the system and every payment that's been made out of the system. And it gives me the information based on each property and how much money is being held for a specific service in a specific property. Just taking just a second for me to navigate there. I'll go ahead and run this report for today's date. I could run it for just one particular property if I wanted to by using these search criteria, but I'm going to almost always want to know for all of my property types and all my property statuses, what money should I have in the bank if I wanted to pay all of my obligations today. So when we run the report, it's going to give me a list of all the properties down the left-hand side of the page. And it's going to show me for each different service how much money I need to have in the bank to be able to pay that out when the time comes. So it'll give me over on the right-hand side a total for each property. It'll give me at the bottom of the report a total for each service. So if I wanted to know how much money I have in the bank or should have in the bank to pay out processing fees, I'd be able to see that number at the bottom of the column. And then, of course, it gives me my grand total in the far right-hand corner. So this is a report that people use when they want to balance their bank account to their system balance on a day-to-day basis. You can actually do that using the bank reconciliation process. You don't have to wait until the end of the month or until you get your statements to do your bank reconciliation if you have access to the information online.
So this is only really an effect of what incomes are being looked at, not necessarily what the expense side is. It looks like all those things are just services, rents, and so forth that are on the income basis of it. Do you also have an area there that covers each of the expenses that you might do paying out? Cleaning services, maintenance items?
Yeah. And, if we were to charge an owner for a maintenance item and we went ahead and paid the vendor, it would show as a negative number in the maintenance column because we've paid that money out of the system, but we haven't necessarily collected it from the owner. Until you process their statement, and then if there's income that offsets that, then it would still give you the total of what should be in the bank to cover the current obligation. So whether that obligation is an expense that's already been paid out, it will show up here in the report.
So does this system differentiate a balancing of the owner's side versus a balancing of the management company side?
Not quite sure how to answer that question. Can you say that again?
In all things, let's just say we're set up on a 60-40 split with owners on all income items. 60% of that goes to the owners, 40% to the management company. Of those funds, it looks like most of these are set up in totality, and the management company is just a vendor in this system that will be paid out our commission, and that's the aspect that covers the owners or the management company side.
Yeah, and typically what people will do,
all the 40% that comes into the management company side, basically in a financial statement type of setting.
Right. And basically what most folks do is they'll go ahead and pay themselves out of the trust account, whether you actually cut a check or just make a bank transfer. That money has to be shown as actually leaving the system. So you would include yourself in an accounts payable run. And then you could use one of the reports that's generated from the batch process to be able to create your journal entries into Great Plains.
Okay, so it doesn't, in Barefoot, it doesn't keep such a financial statement?
Not for the company, no. It's really only managing the trust bank account.
Yes.
Not managing your operating account.
Okay.
Okay. I know we only have about 10 minutes left. We haven't really gotten very far through the actual process of creating a statement. So I'm going to just do that real quick and show you how things work. There are more there are more reports that actually kind of back up this trial balance report. We have a property ledger report and a subsidiary ledger report, which are going to give you the details of how this number is generated. What does that number comprise of? So we can take a look, if you need to do any troubleshooting. You could look at your property ledger report and it would actually show you each folio that's included in this number and all the money that's been paid into that folio and out of that folio. Real good way of being able to just know what these numbers are comprised of if you need to. Just wanted to quickly show you the bank reconciliation and the fact that basically what you're doing when you create a bank rec in the Barefoot system is you're not only comparing your system ins and outs, your deposits and your checks and debits to your statement, but you're also checking your register balance based on that activity, what's left outstanding, and if that all cleared, what would my adjusted balance be, and does it match my trial balance? So you could, if you wanted to reconcile daily, you could use the bank reconciliations for the month and just as the activity comes in, mark it off and generate your trial balance total and know that you've got the correct amount of money in the bank, that it matches your statement and that it matches the system total.
How does that work?
One of the things.
I'm sorry, how does that work in relationship to the payables itself? Do you get a separate AP trial balance?
There's not really a trial balance for it. The trial balance is telling you what your bank account liability is, what your trust account liability is. We do have an accounts payable journal so that when it's time to pay your vendors, whether you pay them once a week or once a month, you can come in here to our accounting reports and the accounts payable report, and based on the due date, let's say I want to make sure that I'm paying everybody through the end of the month of May, so I could choose either June 1st or I could choose May 31st. I can look at all of my services, I can look at all of my vendors, or I can narrow it down if I just want to look at one. And when I run my report, I'm going to basically get all of my unpaid vendor payables in a list. So I can then, and this was part of my job back in Florida, was to go through my file of everything that I'd posted for the last 2 weeks and make sure that my invoices from my plumbers and my AC repairmen and those other folks that did work for me match what I've posted in the system. And I can review that before I create my payable run. So it sounds to me like this is also something that's going to be really helpful for you folks.
It looks like that's all set up on the property base. Is there a vendor-based AP aging?
This is actually vendor-based. I sorted it by service. Let me sort it by vendor. So what this is going to do is it's going to say for each different vendor, I'm going to get a section of my report. So I've got my vendor 24/7 All Services, LLC, and they have one invoice that needs to be paid for $100 for this particular property. So I can see each of my different vendors that is currently owed money and be able to review that before I start my payable run. So now we've got a lot of other ground that we could cover. We didn't really look at what the batch management process looks and feels like. I can tell you that for myself, the owner of the company is a really good friend of mine. I've been working for him since probably 1996. And when we had our old software, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with the accounting. I did basically all the back office work, and he just never wanted to learn it after years of using that system. And now with the Barefoot system, I no longer have to do that work for him. It's easy enough to run your monthly statements that he actually takes care of that process himself at this point in time, which means I have my weekends free now, which is good. But that's just kind of an illustration of just how easy it is to do the process. And we've got some other folks that I'm sure would be happy to tell you that it cuts down on their time spent on their month-end process significantly. And one of the reasons for that is because, and just kind of go back to what I said at the beginning of the call, is that the accounting in the Barefoot system is just really transparent. When you set up a folio, you can see what's being collected and what's being paid out. It's easy to adjust. There are lots of different ways that you can recalculate a folio. You can add new charges. You can adjust charges really easily.
Yeah, Tracy, that's one of the important things too, is that ease of change. Brad generally reviews all the monthly statements and then might make adjustments along the way. So could you show how that process of adjustment would work?
Sure. We're going to do it.
You might want to decrease one of the maintenance charges, might want to, incrementally change things on that way.
Yep, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a new statement. We're going to create a property statement and show you what that looks like. Because we're browser-based, there are hyperlinks available all throughout the system. So I'm just going to go ahead. This is how easy it is to create my batch. This is the same exact process that I would use for a vendor payable run. I would just change it from a property batch to a vendor batch. So what I've got here is a collection of all my different properties that are in the system, and it's going to have collected up all of the income and expenses that have a due date on or before March 31st. So I'm going to go back to my Clooney's Castle and our folio number 30, and I can see my statement here. So I can see that I have a reserve fund required. It's been funded. I have a couple of folios where we're paying out some rent with a deduction for the commission. And then I can also see that I've got a property expense via a work order for an AC repair.
Cool.
If I wanted to change that AC repair, I could click into the property. I could go from the property to the work order. I could also just come back and do a work order search for that particular work order. And I could go in and I could adjust the amount that I'm charging that person. So I'm seeing that, $110 just doesn't seem right. I look at the invoice and know there was a keystroke error. I go ahead and fix that, and now it's $150. I can come back and I can reset this account and pull that new amount into my batch. So I don't have to get out of the system. I don't have to, I don't have to backtrack at all. I can make those adjustments while I'm working in this particular batch. Once I'm done with that, I go ahead and I record the transaction, and that's when we actually create the payable. So this is going to create check and ACH payments to the owners. We'll be able to assign check numbers. We'll be able to assign the right check dates. This is where you can then print the checks or create an ACH file if you do direct deposit via a notcha file. I can, like I said, print the checks. I can email the owners from here. Like I said before, that has that hyperlink. Typically, that just allows them to click on it and open their statement.
Yeah, typically, Tracy, what we like to do is see it in the context of the whole statement, like you showed earlier there on that, so that, because we're kind of looking at getting a net total and seeing how we can achieve that through maybe some alteration of work order or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's another really handy report. I know I was always used to printing out and reviewing my statements in this format. What I found that makes life a lot easier for me is to use my statement report view. And what that does is it basically just condenses the information, and I don't have to look at each individual statement. And let's see if I can get that hyperlink here. So I know we're just about out of time. Is there anything, I'm looking at the notes that I made at the beginning of the call, and I'm thinking that I covered all of the questions that you had brought up at the beginning, but are there any that you've thought of since then that I might be able to address?
There's plenty, yeah, but we're out of time right now. Yeah, we can do it another time.
Yeah. I know when I was going through the sales process and the owner of the company was looking at purchasing the software, I would get off a call with the sales rep, and within a half an hour have a notepad with a couple pages of other questions. So what I'd like to do today is kind of give you the broad stroke, high-level view of what the accounting looks and feels like in the system, letting you know that there are all kinds of reports that you can use to both collect money, to clean up the data, and then to be able to pay out easily and efficiently. There are a lot of bells and whistles that have to do with accounting and things that you can do within the system to either make your life easier or help you generate revenue that we haven't even had time to touch on today. And I think sometimes I get the short end of the stick on demos because I don't get to show the really fun stuff most of the time. But it's the really important stuff that you need to know works and works for your business model before you can make a decision. So, you know, my demo today might have been a little bit boring. Not a lot of cool stuff to show you, but there are some very cool items that have to do with the accounting portion of the software.
Yeah, I'd like the opportunity, Tracy, at some other time, to discuss more of the reporting capability. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, one thing I'm always curious about is the maintenance department and the ability to see if or if not it is maintaining at least a break-even point. So effectively watching, expenses out and income in, charges to owners versus our actual expenses. Is that department sustaining itself or a little bit profitable, or do we have a drain situation there? So I don't know what is where I can keep up with when I place items in a property. I can input that expense and it'll measure it versus the charge that I apply to the owner, and somehow keep track of is maintenance supporting itself, because that's the one department where obviously it can get away from you quick.
Yep, and we will take that as an action item for tomorrow, and we will see you guys again tomorrow at 1:30.
Lovely.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate all of your time this morning, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you then.
All right. Take care now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.